Hi guys, Brett Manning here. I'm the trustee of the new Aussie Constitution Trust. The new Aussie Constitution is a proposed draft replacement for the current Australian Constitution. And if you want to find out more about that, have a look at the first video in this series. Today I'm going to talk specifically about electoral funding. This is an area that is not covered at all in the current Australian Constitution, but an area that's very important. And it's an area that is difficult for the existing political parties to rectify or to improve. So the new Aussie Constitution provides an opportunity for us to set down some electoral funding rules. How do we ensure that our political candidates are not influenced by people with large amounts of money or organisations with large amounts of money? Getting elected in Australia requires quite a bit of money to be spent on political campaigning, and we need to ensure that we have a system that can provide this money, but without undue influence coming from the source of those funds. Because it's not just a case of us determining in our democracy which candidate to elect, but what those candidates are saying is probably going to reflect, to some extent, what those that are funding them want them to say. And this undermines our democracy. So we need a method that allows political parties and candidates to raise the funds they need to be able to get their message out. But at the same time, we need to protect those very same candidates from being under the influence of the people who provide them that funding. So the new Aussie Constitution contains a section on political funding. This section specifically limits where political parties and independent candidates can obtain their funding. Under the new Aussie Constitution, it is proposed that only Australian citizens may be members of Australian political parties. All Australian political parties have to be registered, and if you're running as an independent, you also have to be registered. Once they're registered, all funding has to come through a system, an online system, that's managed by the Australian Electoral Commission. Political parties and organisations that support independent candidates may charge membership fees of up to $50 per person per annum. So that's one source of funding. The next source of funding is through the Australian Electoral Commission, where people can make donations. To be able to make a valid donation, they must be an Australian citizen, and they must be a registered voter. This protects us from foreign influence. Political parties and organisations that support independence will not be allowed to have any other source of funding whatsoever. So if you want to support a political party or you want to support a particular candidate, you would go to the AEC website and make a donation. You'll be able to make a donation of $500 in respect of a lower house candidate, a member of the House of Representatives, and $250 maximum in respect of a Senate candidate. You'll be able to make that donation to a party or to specific candidates. Because these donations will go through the Australian Electoral Commission's website and will be valid from Australian voters only, there is no need for further disclosures from the political parties in relation to those donations. But political parties and organisations that support independent candidates will be expected to have their accounts audited to show that they're not receiving funds from any other sources. So this will provide some funding. There's also very significant funding that comes from the Commonwealth itself, where a candidate that secures 3% of the primary vote can receive funding directly from the Commonwealth. To give some indication, I believe that was over $60 million distributed by the Commonwealth after the last election. So the significant funding comes from there. So a political party will have funding from membership, will have funding from donations from individuals, not from companies, individual voters, and it will have funding that will come from successful candidates will receive from the Commonwealth itself following the election. This funding is not likely to be sufficient based on how much is currently spent on election campaigns. So the third source of funding will be political campaigners. So a political campaigner is an entity, not an individual, that contributes to getting somebody elected. And those contributions can be in different forms. So for instance, a company may provide funding for a television commercial. A union may also provide funding for a television commercial. The company may provide discount venue for a political rally. All these things are sources of funding that will help to get the candidates elected. Now the rules that go around this are where you provide a benefit, where an organisation provides a benefit over $2,000 per annum, they must be registered with the AEC as a political campaigner. And a political campaigner can make contributions up to $20,000 per annum. But the political campaigner must disclose the donation or the benefit at the time that it's made. So if a union pays for a television commercial supporting the Labor Party, then that union must authorise the television commercial so that everyone knows that that's where the money's coming from. The same would apply with a company. If a company provides support for a candidate, they must disclose at that time that they are paying for the venue or they are paying for some other promotional materials. So in this way, we've limited the influence to no more than $20,000 per annum. And we've also made sure that that is declared at the time as to who is actually supporting the candidate at the time. In addition, as a registered political campaigner, they'll also have to make an annual submission to the AEC specifying what candidates or parties they've supported. There are also some exemptions. One is obviously volunteering or providing your personal time to support a political candidate or a party. So people putting in lawn signs, handing out how to vote cards, knocking on doors. So if you volunteer your personal time, that's exempt from these restrictions. Another exemption would be, for instance, an industry organisation that has other normal objectives but has an opinion going into an election supporting one candidate or party. They can make press releases, they can be involved in genuine news stories without becoming a political campaigner. However, if they expend over $2,000 beyond those sort of exemptions, then they become a political campaigner. and have to register and have to disclose any expenditure they have towards that particular election. And also, of course, that is limited to $20,000. Now, the idea with this type of system is that we still have freedom of speech. People can still support candidates and parties, but there are limits, and the electors, the voters, will know who is funding what is being said. Under the current system, our political candidates, before they even get into office, are beholding to individuals that offer very large amounts of money for their electoral campaigns, or organisations that do the same. And those organisations and those individuals are not doing the support for their candidate out of the goodness of their heart. They're doing it because they want their issues pushed forward. So we're in a situation that before a politician even takes office, they're already beholding to a variety of interest groups. Under this system proposed for the new Aussie Constitution, the biggest donation is limited to $20,000. And in the big scheme of things, that's not going to buy a lot of influence. Now, we acknowledge that that's going to require the political parties to rearrange the way they do things. Spend less time focusing on big, powerful organisations and very rich individuals to get their people elected. This can drive wider grassroots support for political candidates going into elections, and will actually strengthen democracy rather than undermining it from the very beginning. The new Aussie Constitution represents a one-off opportunity to fix electoral funding and to strengthen our democracy. But the advantage of putting electoral funding into the Constitution is that it can't be changed by successive governments. If you want to change it, you have to come back to the people. So to summarise, a political party can get funding from its memberships, and it can get funding from individual citizens. And that source of funds and the expenditures of the political party must be audited and disclosed annually. And there's an upper limit for citizens to donate of $750 in total per annum. Organisations donating more than $2,000 must be registered as political campaigners. They must disclose the support that they give at the time that it's given, and also in the annual disclosures to the Australian Electoral Commission. So we have clear transparency, and the voters know right away who's supporting a particular initiative, who's supporting a particular candidate. Thanks for your time.